morning. Hello. Step back a little. Welcome to the Greenville Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. My name is Anna Crow, and I serve this congregation on the sorta Sunday Services Committee as a worship associate and as a member of the Welcoming Committee. Whether you have been with us on Sundays for a long time or are visiting us for the first time today, we welcome you to our service. This congregation is a theologically diverse religious community with participation open to all who agree to live into our principles, mission, and values. We are a welcoming congregation to people of all sexual orientations and gender identities, races, ethnicities, and abilities. And we unconditionally welcome you as your full, authentic self to our community of caring and commitment to grow as spiritual and moral beings. Our congregational mission is to strengthen our connections and one another and our planet by enlivening minds and spirits, building community through liberating love, and advocating fiercely for justice. It is custom in this congregation to acknowledge visitors and newcomers. If this is your first time here, would you mind raising your hand so that we can acknowledge you? And also welcome to first-time people who do not want to be acknowledged. We welcome you as well. I know you're out there, and that's okay. Well, welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. All are invited to join us for coffee after the service. New and newer folks are invited to grab a green mug located just inside the door of the fellowship hall so that we can easily spot you and speak to you during coffee hour, again, assuming you want to be spoken to. We know you're out there as well. You are also welcome to fill out one of the green cards that can be found in the back of the pews so that we can keep in touch with you. Simply drop the card in the offering basket or in the box in the welcome table in the foyer. Please know that whatever your religious history, whatever your personal theology, all people of goodwill are welcome here. Your presence makes us better. Your presence makes us whole. Our service will now begin. If ever there were a time for a candle in the darkness, this would be it. Using a spark of hope, kindle the flame of love, ignite the light of peace, and feed the flame of justice.
Good morning, Goof. I'm the Reverend Chris Hockman. So happy to be here this morning and be serving this congregation. Our call to worship this morning is from the Reverend Sarah Lawal. Out of the flames of fear, we rise with courage of our deepest convictions to stand for justice, inclusion, and peace. Out of the flames of scrutiny, we rise to proclaim our faith with hope to heal a fractured and hurting world. Out of the flames of doubt, we rise to embrace the mystery, wonder, and awe of all there is and all there is yet to be. Out of the flames of hate, we rise with the force of love, love that celebrates our shared humanity. Out of the flames, we rise. Come, let us worship together. Please rise in body or spirit for Gather the Spirit, number 347 in the gray hymnal.
Good morning. I'm David Funderburk. I'm the Director of Religious Education here at GOOF. And before our story, I want to let you know that any elementary school age children who are going to our spirit play classes this morning are we'll have two separate spirit play classes. So kindergartners and first graders will be at this first door on the right in the hallway, and second and third graders will be in the last door on the right. So I want to welcome any children or youth or anyone of any age who would like to sit and see the story up close to come sit on the floor or in the front pews. So our theme this month is justice and equity. And I'm guessing that of those two words, the one that we may be less familiar with is equity. So the story I picked today is called Amelia Understands Equity by Jeff Tucker and Miranda Morrison. And maybe after this story, you'll understand a little bit about what we mean when we say the word equity. Does anyone know how to take a belly breath when you get stressed out? Do y'all know how to do that? Have you ever tried that before? Do you want to try it now? Everyone, I always like to do this before I get up in front of a bunch of people because it can be stressful. So if you ever have a stressful test or anything to do, you can just take a really deep breath. And we call it a belly breath because you can make sure it's deep by making sure it goes all the way down to your belly. It can help calm you down a little bit. So this is a story of Amelia from her perspective. I took a belly breath. Mr. Collins, our school counselor, always tells us to take deep breaths that make our bellies blow up like balloons when we have big feelings. Miss Hall was giving 2 tests today, science and math. The science test was going to be on plants. Mom had helped me study all week. I bet I knew just as much about plants as Miss Hall. It was the math test that scared me. My friends talked about the tests all the way to school. They must have been scared too. I could see them taking belly breaths. Good luck on your test today, said Mr. Collins. If you start having big feelings, remember your belly breaths. I went to class and sat in my front row seat. I used to sit in the back, but everything looked fuzzy from there, so Miss Hall moved me. The best part, I get to sit right by my best friend Cecilia. Miss Hall grabbed a stack of papers. I took another belly breath. Good morning, students, said Miss Hall. As you know, we have 2 tests today. I know how hard you all have studied. Let's get started on our science test. Good luck. The questions on the science test were easy. Well, except the last one. What gas do plants give off? I remembered reading about it with Mom, but what was it? 5 minutes left, Miss Hall said. What gas do plants give off? It was like the answer fell right out of my brain. Time's up, said Miss Hall. Everyone, please pass your papers forward. She walked over to Sammy and whispered, Sammy, you can keep working for 5 minutes. I forgot that Sammy gets extra time on tests. I wish I got extra time. I know that if Miss Hall gave me 1 or 2 more minutes, I would remember what gas plants give off. It wasn't fair. I felt mad. I took a belly breath. After Sammy finished, Miss Hall taught social studies and then went to recess. I couldn't pay attention in social studies and didn't want to play at recess. I was still mad about Sammy's extra time and scared about the math test. When we got back to class, Miss Hall picked up a new stack of papers. All right, students, let's take our math test. Good luck, Cecilia whispered. You too, I said. Miss Hall handed me my test.
When she handed Cecilia her test, she gave her a calculator too. I forgot that Cecilia gets to use a calculator on math tests. It wasn't fair. My face started feeling hot, and my eyes got wet. I felt mad and sad now. I took the biggest belly breath I could. The balloon in my belly was big enough to pop. The math test was super hard. I kept thinking about how much better I could do with a calculator. "Time's up," said Miss Hall. "Place your tests on my desk, then head to lunch." Everyone jumped up and ran out of the classroom, but me. "Amelia, aren't you going to lunch?" asked Miss Hall. "I'm not hungry," I said. "You seem upset. I know tests can bring some big feelings. Why don't you go see Mr. Collins?" "Okay, Miss Hall," I said. I got up and walked to Mr. Collins' office. "Hey there, Amelia. What brings you down to visit?" asked Mr. Collins. "Big feelings," I said. "Why don't you tell me a little about them?" asked Mr. Collins. "I feel sad and mad," I said. "I call that smad," said Mr. Collins. "It's just not fair," I said. "Sammy gets extra time on tests and Cecilia gets a calculator. Why can't everyone get the same things?" "I hear you," said Mr. Collins. "Lots of people get upset when they feel like things aren't fair. Why don't you come on in the office and I'll draw a picture and we'll see if that helps." Mr. Collins took out a sheet of paper. First he drew a prickly cactus. Then he drew a pretty flower. Then he finished by drawing a lily pad. He even put a little frog on top. "I hear you've been learning about plants," said Mr. Collins. "We took a test on them today," I said. "Let's pretend that I want to take care of these 3 plants. Now, what do plants need to be healthy?" "Water and sunlight," I said. "Good," said Mr. Collins. "So I'll give each of my plants the same amount of water and sunlight every day so they can stay healthy." "You can't do that." "Mr. Collins," I said, "lily pads need lots of water. It's where they live. Your cactus wouldn't be healthy with that much water. They all need different amounts of sun, too." "I see," said Mr. Collins. "So my plants need different care to be their best?" "That's right," I said. "I wonder if the kids in class are a little like my plants here," said Mr. Collins. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Sometimes it's not about everyone getting the same thing," said Mr. Collins. "It's about everyone getting what they need to be their best. It's called equity." "Equity?" I asked. "Remember last month when you were having trouble seeing the board? Miss Hall moved you to the front so you could see, so you could do your best. That's equity. She was making sure that all her plants have the right sunlight and water they needed." Mr. Collins was right. Maybe Sammy and Cecilia just needed different kinds of help. "I think I get it, Mr. Collins. I don't feel as smad now," I said. "We all get mad sometimes. Miss Hall has seen you using your belly breaths when you start feeling upset in class. Keep that up. You keep this picture to help you remember our talk about equity. Now head to lunch," said Mr. Collins. I looked at the cactus flower and lily pad. "Mr. Collins," I said, "I'm okay being a plant, but can't I be the flower?" "You can be whatever plant you want," laughed Mr. Collins. "Good," I said. I don't want to be prickly like a cactus, and I really don't want a frog on my head." After school, I went to the grocery store with my mom. There was a parking spot super close, and I told Mom to get it. "We can't park there," she said. "Why not?" I asked. Another car had just taken the spot. I pointed to the car. "How come they can and we can't?" "Well, that's for people with disabilities," Mom said, "like someone who may have trouble walking." "Oh, I get it. It's because of equity, I said. Yes, said Mom, but how do you know that word? I know all about equity, I said. I'm hoping now maybe you know a little more about equity too. So thank you for listening.
Our congregation is entirely self-governed by democratic process. One of the privileges of our free church tradition is to provide all the financial support for our many ministries among ourselves. Generosity, therefore, is one of the spiritual values we recognize as central to our personal and in our institutional well-being. You are now invited to participate in the blessing of giving as the ushers come among you to accept the gifts of the congregation. Thank you. It is custom in our fellowship to share the joys and the sorrows that shape our lives, honoring each one with the lighting of a candle. We recognize that life is not always easy and that we all have moments of celebration and struggle. We believe that by sharing those experiences with one another, we can celebrate with, support, and uplift each other as we navigate the significant events in our lives. From Sandra Lopez, please light a candle for Paco, a sweet, loving shepherd Rottweiler that I found abandoned about 10 days ago. Sadly, we could not keep him and had to surrender him to the Greenville County Animal Shelter. He'd make a wonderful family dog, and I'm committed to spreading the word about him. He's a sweet boy who only needs to find his new best friend and his true home. Please contact Sandra Lopez or see the flyer posted on the bulletin board. From Rob Hereford, I would like to take this opportunity to recognize my wife, Katrina, upon completion of her Master's of Public Administration degree. Yeah, we need that, yes. I am very proud of her accomplishment. I would also like to express joy for my mother-in-law Karen's visit. From the interweb. From Jim Hennigan and Charanjiv Peterson. An appreciation from Charanjiv and Jim for the vision and labor of Audrey's Closet that meant that 2 stateless Rohingya refugee families fleeing genocide and religious persecution in Myanmar could stock up on housewares and warm clothing for their children last week. This is radical hospitality, anticipating what others need before they ask. It is also an example of how we're all connected. In this case, a thrift shop responded to a growing crisis of global migration. Yeah, go for it. This is good. Yeah. We could use to clap more, I think. From Sean Trapp, much love and gratitude to Kat Stellern and Sharon Cook for helping me during and after my recent gallbladder removal surgery on Thursday. From Sabrina Walker, I'd like to thank everyone for the funny and heartful Get Well cards. They've brightened my days more than you know. I'm home from rehab now and getting stronger every day. I'd like to expend a special thank you to the goof friend who has been tying my shoes every so often. No bending is a real pain. From the Aguirre family, Aguirre, thank you. In honor of our dog Daisy, a loved member of our family is off on her next adventure. We will miss her. We will light a final candle representing all the joys and sorrows present in our hearts that remain unspoken. We will now observe a brief moment of silence before the words for meditation begin.
Our words for meditation are a prayer by Laura Horton Ludwig. Spirit of life and love, we are here because we believe what we do matters. We are here because we believe how we live our life matters. That with every act of kindness or meanness, courage or fear, love or hate, we are weaving the fabric of the universe that holds us all. We are here because we need encouragement, because we need strength, because so often we get distracted. We get in a rush, we don't think, we choose the easy way, when the harder path is what our spirits truly long for. We are here because none of us is perfect, but together we inspire one another to try again, to take another step. We are here because we have felt the stirrings of love and grace in our hearts and hands, and we crave more of that for ourselves, and not only for ourselves, for everyone. We are here because how we live matters. Blessed be. I'm going to begin this morning with a reading from the Reverend Carol Thomas Sissel. I am reading her words because I cannot personally experience, have not personally experienced her experience she's talking about, which is Unitarian Universalism for a person of color. She says, diverse, multicultural, inclusive, welcoming. If I made a list of every single UU congregation I have served, visited, or worshiped at, they would have a few things in common, including the use of those words. Perhaps on the front of the order of service, or scrolling across the homepage of their website. Maybe they've been emblazoned on a rainbow-colored banner hanging in the sanctuary. Wherever they are, more often than not, the words are proudly combined with another expression that is embraced in everyday UU vernacular. All are welcome here. The congregations, churches, and fellowships on my list all have one or more of these words proudly on display. I know why they are used so freely. I feel embraced by them. There's a warmth of recognition when my eyes first capture their sight. A sense of being acknowledged and valued moves from heart to head, and then a smile settles on my lips. My heart blooms. I feel like the welcome table has been set for me, and I am eager to pull up a chair. All of this takes place in an immeasurable instant. In the next moment, it is tempered. I remember past experiences and unconsciously recalculate and measure my response. The petals of my heart close a bit, protecting the delicate stigma and stamen that lie within. Fear of disappointment rises within me like the sun. I love those words. I want what they promise, but I have been repeatedly disappointed. It is simply not enough to print them on an order of service or in a newsletter. They must have meaning and intention at their core. A desire for multicultural worship is wonderful, but it will not flower if that seed of yearning is not nurtured by a commitment and a plan. Longing for diversity of race, of gender, of age is only a beginning. It calls for caring and creative programming. Our congregations are primarily white, female, and over 60. If we are to serve into the future, that must change. I believe that we can transform first ourselves and then the world. I am injured repeatedly when we do not. When we use words just for the sake of using them, I am hurt. Without true resolve, planning, and measurable goals behind the things I see, my trust and hope are broken anew. Why does it hurt? Every time I see those words, I feel the possible revival of UUism germinating in the warm soil of spirit. I've seen the transformation begin to take place in Washington State, Washington, D.C., and California. Congregations in Oklahoma continue to push our faith forward. So yes, I am hopeful, but wary. On too many occasions and too many places, these words and the ideals which they carry are given lip service. Words matter. They lift and hold us. They illuminate the future and shower us with possibilities. When misused, they hurt. Verbal cuts and abrasions sting. Language leaves wounds that become scars. Words matter. If you and your congregation are not ready to meet the promises you craft and then share with the world, stop publishing them. Please don't invite me to sit at your table unless you have a warm, satisfying meal to serve. Now, it doesn't have to be a gourmet feast. A potluck is fine. The souffle may only have risen halfway. The cookies might be burned on the edges. The pasta can be overcooked. That's okay. I'm starving. What it must be is fulfilling, real, made with love and ready to be eaten. Remember, I believe what you say and write. Words matter. That's the end of the reading. So I'd agree, yes, words do matter, and that we have to live up to the words we use, practice what we preach, walk the talk, whatever you want to call it. And two of those important words are ones that you use have lifted up since the beginning. And these words are justice and equity, which also happens to be the theme for the month of February. Now, presently, in Unitarian Universalism, you will find the words justice and equity in the second principle, the principle that calls for justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Yet, in the proposed revision of Article 2 of the UUA bylaws, where the principles currently reside, instead proposed we have the petal diagram. You can see, yeah, it's still there. And both, you might notice that both justice and equity have their own individual petals, to the right and the left of interdependence. They are key values of Unitarian Universalism that are, of course, centered in love. So now, we don't only have the petals in the new proposed language, we have some text that goes along with it. So I'd like to show you the text in the proposed Article 2 that accompanies the justice petal and accompanies the equity petal. And there you go. All right. You can see that there's a lot more there than just one sentence, right? There's a little bit more. A little bit, the ideas of justice and equity are filled out a bit. So the justice text reads, "We work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all thrive. We covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. We support the use of inclusive democratic processes to make decisions within our congregations, our association, and society at large." All right, I'm going to unpack that a little bit. So we've got some stronger verbs here than in the principles that we affirm and promote. We've got the verb of work. We've got covenant as a verb. We've got dismantle in the first two sentences alone. So these statements are telling us to live up to those words that matter, those words like diverse and multicultural. It's a charge, not just to think about it or believe it in the abstraction or theory, but to actually do it instead. Now, to dismantle oppression, now that is a really tall order, but if we say we are the people we've been saying all along that believe in justice, these are the things we have to work on, right? I'd also like to note that if the last sentence under the justice category sounds familiar, it's pretty much a restatement of the existing fifth principle of Unitarian Universalism. But the bottom line here with justice is that with the new proposed Article 2, we've got a much stronger, a much more specific call to justice as compared to the existing second principle. All right, we'll move on to the next definition, which is equity. And I'm glad we had a story on equity today. That told it in a way that I'm afraid I cannot. It was so good. So the accompanying text says, "We declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness. We covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain a fully accessible and inclusive communities." So in these two sentences, we have a richer description of what equity can mean for Unitarian Universalists. And again, some more specific charges to be a fully accessible community, right? That's no small task. And I'm sure the first sentence in this blurb sounds familiar to many as well. It's essentially the first principle of Unitarian Universalism. But I do really like that added flair of the right to flourish. People don't just have the right to get by. They have the right to flourish. And again, we have this much stronger call in the second sentence. We've got the verbs, we've got build and sustain, the call to actually do the work of building accessible and inclusive communities. It seems like this language is holding us more accountable for all the words we've been throwing around for a long time, isn't it? Now, this is usually the point in the sermon where people start to panic, if they're taking it seriously. How in the world am I or we going to accomplish all of these things? This all sounds so overwhelming, and it's so much to do, and the stress grows and spirals into despair or even resistance from those who feel they are being asked for way too much. Well, none of these things that are being asked for can happen overnight. We are not going to dismantle an oppressive system in time for lunch tomorrow. We do not even have the people and infrastructure in place in this congregation to make happen the things that need to happen in this congregation to fully and completely be the people we are being asked to be. But it doesn't mean we can't change that. So what I do have to offer you today is a first step. If you happen to be a person who is white, and if you have not participated in this type of step before. So now I'm going to back up and tell you a story of about what this particular step was like for me. And I took this step many years ago now, before I was a minister. I was just a very active member in my UU church in Virginia. And through the church, I signed up for a workshop called Jubilee Anti-Racism Training, learning together about systemic racism. This was a very full weekend, a 2.5-day workshop that was taught by 2 UU trainers who flew in from other cities. I have to say, for me, this workshop was transformational. It changed me. You know, I had always considered myself cool, liberal, anti-racist, but, I quickly learned how little I actually knew. In the workshop, we heard many heartbreaking stories, many told by individuals from their personal experience, and we sat with those terrible moments of inhumanity and inequality in our country's history and also in its present. Now, some of the white people in the training got defensive. They felt like they had been manipulated into feeling bad. And why should they be made to feel guilty about bad things they had no part in doing and for having white privilege they never asked for? Now, I didn't feel that way, but I did get a little defensive in another way. I wanted reassurance that if I made a mistake out of ignorance, that I was still a good person. Both of these reactions, the hyper-defensive and the I'm still a good person, right, are very typical and expected and predictable reactions from white people who are going through their first anti-racism training. It's like clockwork. And I was one of them. They're so classic. But, unlike the folks who resented and resisted the hard emotions that came up, I was willing to go there. And I accepted the pain, and I allowed myself to feel it, that and the disorientation. It was the least I could do because it was really minimal in comparison to the suffering of others over the centuries, suffering that continues through this very day. And if I'm going to be honest, feeling that pain was what made the experience so transformational. You can't think your way there. You have to feel your way there. So as a result of the training, I felt like I had been lied to my whole life. That everything I had taught about fairness, about equity, about how our society works was a fraud. My eyes and heart were now open. I learned of racism in our institutions, how it's built in, even when no one is actively trying to do racist things, right? So I was changed and I was emotionally worn. For days, I felt like I had the wind knocked out of me. But it was worth it, because for the first time, I learned all the things our society doesn't teach us who experience the world as white. That people are not treated the same, that the same rules do not apply to everyone, and that the color of your skin or your cultural background, yes, in this day or age, still has a huge impact on your life, particularly how you are perceived and treated by others and systems. There was a whole other world out there that I didn't know about, and I had not known about it because I had not experienced it. I could not have experienced it because I am white. So, if you are white, simply by being you, you probably have a very skewed vision of reality, an inability to see the polluted water we are all swimming in. So, we as white people have to make a serious intervention on our own selves, on our own lives. Make that effort to get educated and get sensitive to the fact that our reality is different from the reality others experience. So, an after effect of the training I went through, having my eyes open, I started to notice the everyday injustices and slights. And I was willing to say something when I noticed they were happening. And I'm going to give you an example of a thing I did, not because I'm a great person or hero, but just to give you an example of the kind of stuff that happens when your awareness increases. I'm still a work in progress. I still make mistakes, and this is lifelong work. So my anti-racism training coincided with some really interesting events at the Science Museum, where I worked in fundraising at the time. The museum was undergoing a planning process and had brought in consultants from New England somewhere to guide it. And at a certain point, the whole museum staff was invited to a presentation from the consultants on their preliminary ideas for the museum. The consultant said the museum needed an avatar, a character to guide people through all the different exhibitions, to welcome guests and appear on directional signage, and to provide cohesion, a common thread, a common theme for all the experiences the museum offered. The consultants thought they knew who the avatar should be. One of Virginia's and our country's founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson. After all, in addition to politics and government, being president, he was also famous for his inventions and his scientific work, especially in agriculture and botany. The perfect guy for the job, the son of Virginia. Now, upon hearing the news, like y'all, I stifled something between a gasp and a groan as this presentation continued without any interruption. And if you're not aware, Thomas Jefferson is a very complicated figure, especially in Virginia, where he has a history of being deified and worshiped for the great things he did for our country. And he did do some great things, and that should never be denied. The Declaration of Independence, our first legislation on religious freedom, the founding of the University of Virginia, even designing the state capitol in Richmond, which still exists. He also claimed an affinity for Unitarianism, which has, from which Unitarians have claimed him for centuries now. At one time, he was definitely a Unitarian icon. We eventually got past that, but that story is for another sermon. The glossed over reality only recently even opened for discussion in Virginia, where they tried to hide these things. It seems so ridiculous now, or the things regarding his family especially, but Jefferson was a slave owner. He inherited 175 human souls. Some of Jefferson's overseers were known to be violent and cruel to the slaves. Jefferson sold more than 100 souls during his lifetime, and only freed a small handful of them upon his death, mostly his own children. And this legacy is very real in Virginia, as many native Virginians living as Black or as white can trace their ancestry to Thomas Jefferson through his slave Sally Hemings, who was only 16 when she became pregnant with the first of 6 of his children. So, all of this fresh in my mind, I wrote a carefully crafted email to the museum director, attaching an article about Jefferson's complicated family tree and legacy that the New England consultants, probably didn't know enough about or were not sensitive to. I then warned my own boss that I might be in trouble soon and that she might be hearing about it. But I didn't get in trouble. It turned out the next day, there was a similar meeting between the consultants and the museum volunteers, during which was pretty cool, a white volunteer stood up and said that having Jefferson as an avatar would ensure that people of color would not feel welcome at the museum. The volunteer, who had no paycheck on the line, put it much more bluntly than I did, and I was really grateful for that. So the Thomas Jefferson as avatar idea was quickly scrapped. So this is just one little example of what my new awareness of injustice compelled me to do to speak up. Did I change the world? No. Did I do it on my own? No. But I can almost guarantee that I would not have taken those actions I did and other ones I've done since without the awareness I received in this training. It is that powerful. It is that important. So back to the next step I'd referred to earlier. Guess what? Y'all have the opportunity to participate in the same training that changed my life. Because in April, this training is being offered online, specifically for South Carolina UUs. It's April 12th to 14th. That information is in our e-news. The registration information is in there. And there are scholarships available to cover the fee if that is an issue. No one who is interested will be turned away for lack of funds. But the overall point here is that fair and just treatment is just simply not the reality for everyone. Injustice and inequality is everywhere, and in many cases, it's getting worse. And we have to make an effort to do something about it. That's what our religion, with its old principles and its new petals with those important words, justice and equity, calls us to do. If we do not act on them, they are noble words and nothing more. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen. All right, y'all know this one. You do not need to be in your hymnals. You can look and read off the screen. No hiding. Please rise and body your spirit for This Little Light of Mine.
As our service comes to an end, please join me in reading the words in your order of service so we may extinguish the chalice together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Our closing words today are a little old school. They're actually in the gray hymnal from Edward Everett Hale. I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do. Dear ones, go in peace, return in love, and blessed be.